What if the child you raised with love slowly became the very nightmare you feared? I watched helplessly as my sweet little girl transformed before my eyes, charming everyone around her, manipulating my husband, friends, and family, all while hiding a darkness only I could see. Every smile, every innocent word, every perfect gesture was a weapon carefully crafted to control and isolate me. From whispers in the night to calculated chaos during the day, she turned our home into a battlefield, and I was powerless. This is the true story of how I raised a monster in plain sight and the chilling journey of fear, manipulation, and survival that no parent could ever forget. I still remember the first time I held her, like it happened yesterday. The hospital room smelled like disinfectant and clean sheets, that sharp, sterile smell that stays in your nose long after you leave. The lights were too bright. My body felt broken, empty, exhausted, and somehow full at the same time. I had just been torn open by pain and fear and hope all at once. And then they placed her in my arms. She was warm, so small, so quiet. Her skin was soft like silk, her little chest rising and falling in slow, gentle breaths. Her tiny fingers wrapped around my thumb, and in that moment, my entire world changed. I didn't scream, I didn't laugh, I didn't even speak. I just cried. The silent kind of crying, the kind that comes from deep in your chest, not your eyes. The kind that feels like your soul breaking open. Everyone in the room kept saying the same words. She's perfect. She's beautiful. She's so calm. She's such a good baby. The nurse smiled and said, "You got a good one, Mama." And I believed her. God, I believed her with everything inside me. From the very beginning, she was different from other babies. She barely cried. She barely fussed. She didn't cling. She didn't demand. She would just stare. Long, focused stares. Not confused, not blank. Aware. Like she was already studying the world. Like she was already learning people. At night, while other babies screamed and kept their mothers awake, she slept. Deep, still, silent. Sometimes I would wake up in panic, heart racing, just to check if she was breathing. I would place my hand on her tiny chest, and there it was, that slow, calm rise and fall. Peaceful, perfect. People envied me. Other moms would look at her and say things like, "You're so lucky. I wish my baby was that easy. She's such an angel. You hit the jackpot." And I smiled, because I truly believed I had been blessed. I thought God had given me a miracle. I didn't know He gave me a test. As she grew, the pattern continued. She walked early, she talked early, she learned fast. But she didn't learn like other children. She didn't learn through play. She learned through observation. She watched people. Not cartoons, not toys, not colors. People. Their faces, their reactions, their emotions, their tone, their fear, their happiness, their weakness. She would sit quietly in corners, on couches, on the floor, and just watch, studying, absorbing, processing. I used to think she was just intelligent, advanced, gifted, special. I was proud, so proud. I dressed her in cute little outfits, took pictures, recorded videos, built memories. I built my entire life around her. Birthday parties, family traditions, holiday routines, school events, matching pajamas, smiling family pictures. We looked like the perfect American family. Clean house, warm kitchen, laughter, love, structure, stability. From the outside, our life looked beautiful, safe, happy, normal. But there were small moments, tiny moments, moments I ignored, moments I excused, moments I explained away. Her smiles didn't always reach her eyes. Sometimes she would smile when other kids cried, when someone fell, when someone was scared, when someone was hurt. And I would tell myself, she's just curious. She doesn't understand yet. She's still a baby. Because that's what mothers do. We protect, we excuse, we defend, we rationalize, we love blindly. There were nights I would rock her in the dark, the house silent, the world asleep, only the sound of her breathing and the clock ticking, her head resting on my chest, her body warm against mine, and I would whisper promises into her hair. I'll protect you. I'll love you forever. I'll always be here. I'll never let anything hurt you. I meant every word, with my whole soul. I didn't know one day I would be the one needing protection. I didn't know one day I would feel fear in my own home. I didn't know one day I would question my own sanity because of her. Back then, she was just my baby, my little girl, my miracle, my heart, my purpose. If someone had told me then what she would become, if someone had warned me, if someone had shown me the future, I would have laughed. I would have defended her. I would have fought them. I would have said they were cruel, crazy, heartless. Because no mother believes her child can be darkness. No mother believes her child can be danger. No mother believes evil can grow in her own arms. She slept in my arms. She called me mommy. She held my face. She smiled at me. How could something so small, so soft, so innocent ever become something terrifying? I didn't know. I couldn't know. Because evil doesn't always arrive screaming. Sometimes it arrives wrapped in a blanket. Sometimes it arrives with tiny fingers and soft skin. Sometimes it calls you mommy. And sometimes it grows quietly, silently, inside your home, inside your life, inside your heart, right in front of your eyes. And you don't see it until it's too late. The first real lie didn't come with chaos. No screaming, no crying, no panic. It came quietly, almost politely. She was 4 years old enough to speak clearly, old enough to understand rules, old enough to know the difference between truth and lying. I had stepped into the kitchen for less than a minute, less than 60 seconds. I was grabbing a glass of water when I heard it. That sound. That sharp, brittle sound that doesn't belong in a house. Glass breaking. My heart jumped into my throat. I ran back into the living room and froze. The lamp was shattered. Glass everywhere. On the carpet, on the couch, on the floor. Tiny shards catching the light. And there she was, standing in the middle of it. Barefoot, completely still. Not crying, not shaking, not scared, not panicked. Just standing, looking down at the broken glass, not shocked, not confused, observing, like she was looking at something she had expected to happen. I rushed forward, grabbed her, lifted her up, checked her feet, her legs, her arms. No blood, no cuts, no scratches. Thank God. I hugged her tight, my heart pounding, and said softly, "Sweetheart, what happened?" She looked up at me, straight into my eyes. No fear, no guilt, no nervousness, just calm. And she said in the softest, sweetest voice, "The cat did it." Her tone was natural, confident, casual, like she was stating a fact. There was only one problem. We didn't have a cat. We never had, never owned one, never even talked about getting one. I blinked, confused, and said gently, "Baby, we don't have a cat." She didn't freeze, she didn't panic, she didn't stutter, she didn't cry, she didn't look scared. She just tilted her head slightly, like she was thinking. Then she smiled and said, "Oh." A small pause, then, "I forgot." That was it. No emotion, no shame, no guilt, no fear. Just correction, like she had made a small mistake in a math problem and fixed it. Something cold slid through my chest. Not fear, not terror, not panic. Confusion. Deep, heavy confusion. Because normal kids lie badly. They cry, they panic, they look away, they get scared, they stumble over words, they react. She didn't react. She adjusted, she recalculated, she corrected the story and moved on. I cleaned the glass while she sat on the couch. Quiet, too quiet, not fidgeting, not restless, just watching me, watching my face, watching my movements, watching my reactions. It felt wrong. Not loud wrong, not obvious wrong, but subtle wrong, unsettling wrong. Later that night, after she was asleep, I couldn't stop thinking about it. I tried to explain it away. She's 4. Kids lie. Kids imagine things. Kids make up stories. But something about it didn't feel childish. It felt controlled, calculated, intentional. That lie was the first crack. After that, the lies didn't stop. They evolved. Small ones at first. I didn't do it. It wasn't me. It just happened. Then smarter ones, more detailed, more believable. She learned patterns. She learned reactions. She learned what people believed. She learned who questioned her. She learned who didn't. She learned how to change her voice, how to change her face, how to change her emotions, depending on who she was talking to. At school, she was perfect. Teachers adored her. She's so honest. She's so well-behaved. She's so mature. She's such a good girl. At home, I started seeing something else. She would break things, blame others, blame accidents, blame imaginary reasons, blame situations. Never herself, never responsibility, never guilt. And when confronted, she didn't cry, she didn't beg, she didn't scream. She stayed calm, soft voice, wide eyes, innocent face, perfect performance. People believed her. Every time. If I questioned her in front of others, she would look hurt, confused, wounded, like a fragile little girl being attacked by her own mother. And I would look like the villain, the harsh one, the strict one, the dramatic one. People would say, "She's just a child. You're too hard on her. You're overthinking it. You're being paranoid." Slowly, they stopped believing me, and slowly, I started doubting myself. Maybe I am crazy. Maybe I'm imagining things. Maybe I'm projecting fear. Maybe I'm seeing things that aren't there. But deep inside, a voice whispered, "This is not normal. This is not innocence. This is not childhood. This is not imagination. This is learning. This is strategy. This is adaptation. This is something growing." That night, I sat on the edge of her bed and watched her sleep. Her face looked peaceful, angelic, soft, innocent. Long lashes, slow breathing. I brushed her hair back and kissed her forehead. And I felt love, real love, deep love, powerful love. But underneath that love, there was something new, something I had never felt before. A thin thread of fear. Not fear of the world hurting her, not fear of her getting hurt, but fear of what she might become. And that terrified me, because no mother should ever feel afraid of her own child. But that night, for the first time in my life, I did. By the time she started school, I realized something terrifying. She didn't just lie. She'd performed. She understood something most adults never learn, that people don't see truth. They see stories. They see emotions. They see what they want to see. And she knew how to give them exactly that. At school, she was perfect. Not good, not nice, perfect. Teachers adored her. She's so polite. She's so respectful. She's so mature for her age. She's a leader. She's such a sweetheart. Parents trusted her. They let their kids stay at our house. They asked her to help their children. They praised her manners. They praised her kindness. She smiled. She said please. She said thank you. She helped clean up. She followed rules. She became everyone's favorite child, and I became the only one who saw something else. At home, the mask came off. Not completely, not violently, not dramatically, but quietly, coldly, subtly. She didn't seek affection. She didn't cuddle. She didn't come to me for comfort. She didn't cry in my arms. When she was upset, she didn't melt down. She withdrew. She watched. She calculated. And when she smiled, it wasn't warmth. It was control. Sometimes she would whisper things to me when no one else was around. Things no child should say. Things no child should think. Nobody will believe you. Everyone likes me more. You need me. I don't need you. She was 7 years old. 7. And those words felt older than her body, older than her face, older than her voice. She would create conflict, not by screaming, not by hitting, not by breaking things, but by whispering, by planting ideas, by changing stories. She would tell her father one version, tell me another, tell teachers another, tell relatives another, and then she would sit back and watch the confusion, watch the arguments, watch the tension, watch the chaos, like entertainment, like a game, like a show made just for her. If someone confronted her, she became the perfect victim. Tears on command, shaking voice, innocent eyes, hurt expression. People rushed to protect her. She's sensitive, she's emotional, she's just misunderstood, she's a child. And I became the problem, the strict mother, the cold mother, the controlling mother, the dramatic mother. People started defending her from me, my own family, my own friends, my own husband. They started saying things like, maybe you're too hard on her, maybe you're projecting, maybe you have anxiety, maybe you're the issue. And slowly, they stopped listening to me. I started losing my voice, losing my credibility, losing my place in my own home. My husband and I began fighting, not because of money, not because of love, not because of infidelity, because of her. He saw a sweet daughter. I saw a stranger, a quiet stranger, a cold stranger, a child who felt wrong in ways I couldn't explain. When I tried to talk about it, he would say, "She's just a kid. You're reading too much into it. You're imagining things." But I wasn't. I was watching patterns, learning behaviors, seeing consistency, seeing control, seeing manipulation, seeing strategy. This wasn't chaos. This wasn't emotional. This wasn't impulsive. This was intentional. One night, I heard her in her room talking to her dolls. Not playing, talking, calmly, quietly, in full sentences. I decide who cries. I decide who fights. I decide who stays. I decide who leaves. I stood in the hallway, frozen. My skin went cold. My heart pounded in my ears. When I walked in, she smiled, sweet, innocent. "Hi, Mommy." Like nothing happened, like nothing was wrong, like I hadn't just heard something that didn't belong in a child's mouth. At school, she was winning awards, perfect attendance, perfect behavior, perfect grades. At home, I was living in fear. Not loud fear, not obvious fear, quiet fear. The kind that sits in your chest, the kind that doesn't scream, the kind that whispers. I started walking on eggshells, watching my words, watching my tone, watching my reactions, because I knew she was watching me, studying me, learning me, using me. Sometimes she would look at me with a smile that felt wrong, not angry, not cruel, just empty, and say things like, "You're tired, Mommy. You look weak. You cry too much. You're emotional." She spoke like an adult, like a therapist, like a manipulator, not like a child. I started sleeping with my door locked, not because she threatened me, not because she hurt me, but because my instincts were screaming, and I didn't understand why. I felt crazy, paranoid, alone, isolated. No one believed me, Everyone saw an angel. I saw two faces, the public face, the private face, the perfect child, the hidden mind. And the scariest part wasn't what she did, it was how calm she was doing it, how patient, how controlled, how quiet. Evil doesn't always come violent. Sometimes it comes intelligent. Sometimes it comes charming. Sometimes it comes polite. Sometimes it comes smiling. Sometimes it comes in a child's body. And you don't see it until you're already trapped inside it. And by the time I understood that, it was already too late. At first, I didn't understand what she was doing. I thought she was just being a child, moody, confused, emotional, growing. But slowly, painfully, I realized something far worse. She wasn't reacting, she was orchestrating. She didn't play with toys, she played with people. She didn't create chaos, she designed it. She started with her father. She would walk into the room and say something small, something harmless, something innocent. "Daddy, Mommy said you don't care about us. Daddy, Mommy says you don't listen to her. Daddy, Mommy thinks you're mean." Then she would come to me, with tears, with shaking lips, with fear in her eyes. "Mommy, Daddy yelled at me. Mommy, Daddy says I'm bad. Mommy, Daddy doesn't love me." Two stories, two victims, one child, one lie, and one house slowly filling with tension. At first, we argued. Then we fought. Then we stopped talking. And she watched it all, quietly, carefully, like a director watching her movie. If I confronted her, she would cry. Real tears, convincing tears. People would rush to protect her. She's sensitive, she's emotional, she's just a child. And I would look cruel, heartless, cold, like the villain in her story. She did the same with relatives, friends, teachers, neighbors. She whispered things into ears, tiny sentences, carefully chosen words, seeds, then stepped back and watched them grow into chaos, arguments, conflicts, misunderstandings, distance, hatred, suspicion. And she never looked guilty. She looked entertained. She learned what made people fight. She learned what made people doubt. She learned what made people leave. She learned how to isolate me, how to weaken me, how to separate me from support. And she did it slowly, so slowly that no one noticed. My friends stopped visiting. Family gatherings became tense. Phone calls felt heavy. Conversations became awkward. People started avoiding us, avoiding me. I became the common problem in every story. She's too emotional, she's unstable, she's dramatic, she's always upset. My own husband started doubting me. Maybe you were imagining it. Maybe you're projecting your fear. She's just a kid. I started doubting myself. Am I crazy? Am I paranoid? Am I broken? Am I seeing things? Gaslighting doesn't always come from adults. Sometimes it comes from children. Sometimes it comes from someone small, someone innocent looking, someone no one would ever suspect. Our home became tense, heavy, quiet, unstable. We lived on her moods. Her energy controlled the house. If she was calm, the house was calm. If she was cold, the house was cold. If she was distant, the house felt empty. We didn't realize it, but we were orbiting her, living around her, adjusting to her, serving her emotional climate. I started losing myself, my identity, my voice, my confidence, my strength. I stopped trusting my instincts, stopped trusting my thoughts, stopped trusting my reality, because everyone else trusted her. She became untouchable, protected, defended, admired. She became the center, the star, the victim, the angel, and I became the villain, the problem, the unstable mother, the overreacting woman, the crazy one. Sometimes she would sit on the stairs and listen to us fight, silent, still, watching, not crying, not scared, not upset, just watching. And when we noticed her, she would suddenly change. Tears, fear, small voice, shaking body, perfect performance, perfect timing, perfect manipulation. I tried therapy, counseling, parenting classes, books, experts. No one believed me. No one saw it. No one understood. They all said the same thing. She's just a child. You're too hard on her. You're projecting. You're anxious. You need help. And maybe I did, because I was living in psychological warfare inside my own home with my own child. I started feeling trapped, like I couldn't escape, like I couldn't win, like I couldn't protect anyone, not even myself. She had learned power, not physical power, psychological power, emotional power, social power, control without force, damage without violence, destruction without fingerprints. And that's the most dangerous kind, because there are no bruises, no scars, no evidence, just broken relationships, broken trust, broken homes, broken minds. She was a child, but she was building a battlefield, and we were all soldiers in a war we didn't know we were fighting. And the scariest part? She enjoyed it, not with laughter, not with excitement, but with calm, with control, with satisfaction, with silence. Because true monsters don't scream. They observe, they calculate, they wait, and they destroy you slowly while smiling at your face. By the time she was 9, I realized what she was doing to our lives wasn't just mischief, manipulation, or typical childhood behavior. It was isolation. Friends stopped coming over. Family visits became rare. Phone calls went unanswered or ended in tension. She had learned how to divide and conquer, and she did it perfectly. It didn't happen all at once. It started slowly. A small comment here, a subtle accusation there, a whispered word into a friend's ear, a quiet complaint to a relative. And the effect wasn't immediate. It simmered. It spread. Like ink in water, like poison in a drink. I would watch people I loved begin to doubt me, slowly, quietly, almost imperceptibly. She's just a sensitive kid, they said. You're overreacting, it's normal. You need to be more patient. You're imagining it. And then the calls stopped. The invites stopped. The emails went unanswered. People stopped showing up. It wasn't dramatic, not explosive, not confrontational, just quiet, subtle, deadly. She watched all of it unfold, sitting on the couch, playing with a doll, drawing in her notebook, smiling occasionally, always observing. At school, she was a perfect student, well-behaved, polite, loving, everyone's favorite. At home, she became the center of our attention. Without even trying, she controlled the energy in the house. If she was calm, we tiptoed around her. If she was upset, we froze. If she cried, we all rushed to her side. We lived by her emotions, by her mood, by her whims, and we didn't even realize it. I started questioning my own reality. Was I imagining things? Was I crazy? Was I overreacting? I began noticing patterns, subtle things she did when people came over, small whispers, brief accusations, little complaints about me or my husband. They were too quick to notice, too brief to be concrete, yet enough to sow doubt. We had a neighbor, a sweet woman named Linda. She had been friends with me for years. She loved my daughter, or so I thought. Then one day she called me. Her voice was hesitant, awkward. I'm sorry, but I don't think it's safe for me to visit anymore. When I asked why, she said, I don't feel right around her. I was stunned. I didn't understand. She had never acted aggressively. She had never done anything wrong. But then I realized my daughter had planted a seed, a few whispers, a few carefully chosen words, and Linda's confidence in me was shaken. It wasn't the first time, and it wasn't the last. Family members began to take sides, subtle judgments, quiet criticisms, unspoken doubts. Even my husband began to waver. Are you sure you're imagining it? He asked one night. Maybe she's just difficult sometimes.
I wanted to scream. I wanted to cry. I wanted to say, "Don't you see what she's doing?" But I didn't, because every time I tried to explain, she would change. Calm voice, wide eyes, innocent expression. She would cry just enough, shaking lips, tearful voice, perfect performance. And everyone defended her. "She's just a child," they said. "You're too hard on her. She's so sensitive." And slowly, I became the problem. The unstable mother, the overreacting woman, the paranoid parent. Isolation became my reality. I stopped inviting friends over. I stopped trying to reach out. I stopped trusting anyone. The house became quieter, empty, tense, and she thrived. At school, everyone adored her. At home, she ruled. We were all orbiting her, living by her rules, adapting to her moods, serving her needs. No one noticed, no one believed me, no one understood the psychological storm she had created. I started to feel trapped, not physically, not literally, but mentally, emotionally, socially. I had no allies, no support, no one to turn to. I started doubting myself more and more. Was I too emotional? Was I unstable? Was I imagining it? But deep down, I knew the truth. This was no ordinary child. She wasn't just difficult. She wasn't just mischievous. She wasn't just smart or observant. She was strategic, manipulative, calculated, dangerous. And I had no one to tell, no one who would believe me. Isolation isn't loud. It's quiet, subtle, slow. It creeps into your life. It erodes your support. It dismantles your relationships. It fractures your family. It weakens your sense of reality. And by the time you notice it, you're already inside it, and it's too late. I remember nights I would sit alone in my room, watching the house through a crack in the door, listening to her laugh with her father, watching her play with toys that had long lost their innocence, seeing the way she smiled at her own cleverness. I would cry quietly, not loud enough for anyone to hear, not loud enough for her to notice, because she would take it, use it, twist it. And I began to realize the worst part. She didn't need to yell. She didn't need to hit. She didn't need to scream. She didn't need to do anything visible. Her power was quiet, invisible, insidious, all-consuming. She was 9, and she had already begun dismantling our lives, silently, calmly, patiently, and I watched it happen, powerless.
She was 12 the first time I saw the mask slip. 12. 12 years old. A child, people would say, an innocent girl. My daughter. And yet, the person standing in front of me that day was not my little girl. It began like any ordinary afternoon. I was sitting at the kitchen table, finishing some paperwork, trying to reclaim a fragment of normalcy in the house. She came in from school, backpack swinging, smiling as if the world belonged to her. I looked up and smiled back, hoping to catch a glimpse of the sweet child I remembered. But something was different. Her smile wasn't soft. It wasn't warm. It was deliberate, controlled, practiced. She carried a small envelope in her hand. I didn't pay much attention. I assumed it was a note from school, a permission slip, something ordinary. She walked over, handed it to me with a perfectly polite, "Here, Mummy." I opened it and froze. It was a note from a neighbor, a woman I had trusted for years. "Your daughter took something from me today. I'm not sure what to do. Please talk to her about honesty and respect." I looked up at my daughter, my stomach twisting. She tilted her head, smiled that same calm, empty smile, and said, "I don't steal, Mummy. I make people give me things." She said it as if she had rehearsed it in front of a mirror, every inflection perfect. A shiver ran down my spine. I opened my mouth to respond, to scold, to ask why, to demand an explanation, but she didn't wait. She laughed softly.
Not a child's laugh, a slow, almost amused laugh, one that felt older than her 12 years. I realized in that moment something horrifying. This was not a child, not the daughter I had raised. It was a performer, a manipulator, a strategist, and she knew exactly how far she could push me. I remember gripping the edge of the table, my knuckles white. My heart was racing, my chest tight. I tried to control my voice, but it trembled. "Why would you do that?" I asked. Her eyes met mine, steady, calm, unwavering. "Because I can," she said. Her words were small, but the weight behind them was immense. I wanted to scream, I wanted to punish, I wanted to shake her, but I knew that would play into her game. Because she didn't crave punishment, she craved control. She wanted to see how far she could manipulate me, how far she could manipulate everyone around her, how far she could go before anyone realized what she was doing. She had learned patience, she had learned timing, she had learned observation, she had learned people. Everything she did from that day forward was calculated. At school, she continued to shine. Her teachers adored her, her classmates loved her. She was popular, confident, admired. At home, she was unpredictable. Calm one moment, cold the next, sweet one minute, distant the next. Always watching, always calculating. She created tension without raising her voice. She created conflict without confrontation. She made accusations that seemed innocent, but left wounds that festered. She whispered things into ears, friends, relatives, neighbors, and watched the ripple effects grow. And the most terrifying part? She did it all with a smile. No one suspected her. No one believed me when I tried to explain. "She's just a child," they said. "You're reading too much into it," they said. "Stop being dramatic," they said. I began to realize the mask wasn't just her innocence. It was a weapon. Her calm, sweet demeanor was a shield. Her polite words were a trap. Her tears were ammunition. She could manipulate anyone. She could turn anyone against me. She could make anyone doubt me. Even me. There were nights I lay awake, listening to the house breathe, listening to her sleep, her steady breathing, her soft sighs, her perfect little movements. And I wondered, what was she thinking? Was she aware of the destruction she was capable of? Was she aware of the power she held over everyone? Was she aware of the fear she instilled without even trying? Sometimes I caught her looking at me, not with childlike curiosity, not with love, not with innocence, but with scrutiny, like she was studying me, testing me, learning how far she could push. I started doubting my own instincts. Was I exaggerating? Was I imagining patterns that weren't there? Was I letting fear cloud my judgment? But deep down, I knew. I knew the calmness. I knew the precision. I knew the subtle power. She was no longer my daughter. She was something else, something I didn't understand, something I couldn't control. And that realization was crushing. Because once the mask slipped, there was no going back. Once I saw her strategy, her calculation, her intent, I knew the rest of our lives would be a battle. I realized then that love wasn't enough, protection wasn't enough, patience wasn't enough, because the truth was horrifying. She was 12 years old, and she was already planning, already manipulating, already controlling, and I was powerless to stop it.
By the time she turned 14, I had stopped hoping she would be just a normal teenager. I had long since realized that my daughter's sweetness, her polite words, her calm demeanor, they were weapons. Her smile could charm a room, but behind it was a threat. It began with small tests. She would push boundaries at home and then step back with that perfect, innocent expression, a tilted head, wide, childlike eyes, a small, apologetic smile, And suddenly, I was the one apologizing. To her, to myself, even to anyone who witnessed the interaction. At school, she continued to shine. Teachers raved about her. She's mature for her age, they said. She's kind, she's thoughtful, she's a model student. But at home? Home had become a minefield. Every word, every glance, every decision had to be carefully calculated. I never knew when she was watching. I never knew when she would twist something into a weapon. I never knew when a casual conversation would become a tool she could use to manipulate, isolate, or destroy. She had learned the power of suggestion. It started with small things. Mom, I think Mrs. Davis is talking about me behind my back. Mom, I don't think anyone at school really likes you. It escalated. Mom, if you yell at me, everyone will hate you too. Mom, you're always so unfair. No one will believe you. And every time she measured my reaction, she saw the flicker of anger in my eyes. She noted the hesitation in my voice. She cataloged my fear. She wasn't just a child, she was studying me. I began to notice patterns in her behavior that made my blood run cold. She would smile at friends' misfortunes, not the innocent kind of smile children give when they're amused by something silly. This was calculated, controlled, quietly cruel. She would provoke arguments and disappear before the consequences arrived. She would make a friend feel insecure and then position herself as the comforter, the supporter, the good girl. And every time she did it, I watched helplessly, knowing I could not protect anyone from her. Even at 14, she was smarter than anyone gave her credit for. She could read emotions like a book. She could exploit weaknesses. She could manipulate adults and children alike. And she had learned to do it invisibly, silently, leaving no evidence. I remember one night in particular that changed everything. It was a Friday. My husband was away on a business trip. I was alone in the living room, trying to relax, reading the book. She came in quietly, sitting beside me on the couch. "Mom, I think you're stressed," she said softly. I smiled, half amused. "I guess I am a little." She tilted her head, her eyes locked on mine. "Do you know what happens when people are stressed, Mom?" I looked at her, puzzled. "What?" "They make mistakes. They say things they don't mean. They get angry. They lose control." I nodded slowly, not realizing the trap. She smiled, just enough to be endearing, and said, "That's dangerous, Mom. Dangerous for people like me." A chill ran down my spine. Something in the way she said it, so calm, so casual, yet so precise, made my stomach knot. I realized in that instant she was warning me. Not a joke, not a teen comment, a warning. She knew her power over me. She knew she could twist me, manipulate me, control me, and she was letting me know. I didn't sleep that night. I sat on my bed, staring at the ceiling, feeling the weight of her intelligence, her strategy, her complete lack of empathy. She was 14, and she was already terrifying. The next day, I started noticing more. How she could turn small incidents into dramatic events, how she could make friends argue without ever raising her voice, how she could make adults doubt themselves while appearing completely innocent. Her skill was uncanny. I tried to talk to my husband about it, but he brushed it off. "She's just a teenager," he said. "All kids test boundaries. You're overreacting." But I knew better. This wasn't testing boundaries. This was manipulation. This wasn't adolescence. This was control. I started documenting everything, every lie, every provocation, every argument, every subtle manipulation. I needed proof, not for anyone else, but for myself. I was terrified of doubting my own instincts, terrified of dismissing the truth, terrified that I might be wrong. And so I documented. I wrote down every interaction, every word, every expression, every calculated smile, because I couldn't trust anyone else to see it. By the end of that year, I realized something horrifying. She had grown up in a way that made her untouchable. No one would believe me if I tried to explain. No one could stop her. No one could predict her moves. And the scariest part? She enjoyed it. Not with the kind of joy you expect from a child, not with laughter or playfulness, but with calm satisfaction, with the knowledge that she had power, that she had control, that she was untouchable. I remember standing in the kitchen one evening, watching her do her homework. She glanced up at me and smiled, perfectly innocent, completely harmless, like an angel. But I knew better. Behind that smile was a mind working tirelessly, calculating, planning, controlling, and I knew without a doubt that our lives would never be the same. From that moment on, I lived in quiet terror, not of what she would say or do publicly, but of what she was capable of in private, of the plans she was making, of the chaos she could create, of the family she could destroy, of the power she wielded silently behind her smile. And I knew one thing for certain: I had raised a nightmare. If you want, I can continue immediately with,
By the time she turned 15, I had begun to feel as if I was living in a house that belonged to someone else. Not my daughter, not my home, not the family I thought I had built. It belonged to the child I had raised. She had learned every corner of our home, every routine, every habit, every weakness. She knew exactly how to move through rooms so that I never caught her in the act. She knew exactly which words to say to push us apart. She knew exactly when to smile, when to frown, and when to disappear entirely. She had created a labyrinth, a house of secrets. I didn't notice it at first. I was too busy keeping up appearances, keeping her safe, keeping my family together. But slowly, I began to see it. Little things. The way she would hide letters or notes, sometimes even small objects she had taken. The way she would whisper things to friends or neighbors, just loud enough for someone to hear, planting seeds of doubt. The way she would watch me from a distance, not moving, not reacting, just observing. I realized that the house itself had become her playground, every room a stage, every hallway a corridor of observation, every corner a secret she could exploit. She had learned to isolate us, to create tension between me and my husband, between me and my friends, between me and my family. And when she wasn't actively manipulating, she was silently watching, waiting, learning. One afternoon, I went to the kitchen to make tea. She was sitting at the dining table staring at a notebook. I assumed she was doing homework. I assumed she was being a normal teenager. I was wrong. I watched her write. Not notes for school, not homework assignments, not doodles or lists. She was writing about us, about me, about my husband, about her own plans, about her observations, about what she had learned, what she could do, and how easily we could be controlled. Every word precise, every thought calculated. I wanted to take the notebook. I wanted to confront her. I wanted to scream, but I didn't, because I knew the power she held, because I knew what she could do. I quietly backed out of the room, my heart hammering. I couldn't even speak. That night, I lay awake listening to the house breathe, listening to her breathing, listening to her soft movements in the darkness. I realized then that my daughter had transformed our home into a battlefield, not with weapons or violence, not with screams or anger, but with control, with secrets, with manipulation. Every whisper, every smile, every careful word had become a tool, and I had been blind. I remembered trying to talk to my husband about it one evening. She's not normal, I said, my voice trembling. He looked at me with tired eyes. Mom, she's 15. She's a teenager. We all go through phases. She's smart, that's all. Don't overthink it. I wanted to scream. I wanted to say, you don't understand. She's controlling everything, and you're blind to it. But I couldn't, because even he was already under her spell. Even he couldn't see it. And that realization made me feel completely alone. I started to notice how carefully she monitored our behavior, how she learned exactly what made us uncomfortable, how she learned exactly how to push buttons, how she learned exactly what words to say to start arguments or end conversations, how she learned exactly who would believe her and who wouldn't. She had a map of the people in our lives, a map of our weaknesses, a map of our fears, and she used it silently, every day, every hour, every moment. Sometimes I would find small things she had done, notes she left, objects she moved, subtle lies she had planted, but she was always careful, always deliberate, always one step ahead. I began to dread entering rooms, dread making phone calls, dread receiving messages, dread interacting with anyone, because I knew she was always watching, always listening, always recording. She had turned our home into a prison, a place where fear lived quietly, where tension hid in corners, where silence was heavy and loaded, where even a simple conversation could be twisted into chaos. And the worst part? She didn't need to raise her voice. She didn't need to act out. She didn't need to do anything visible at all. She just needed to exist, to watch, to smile, to manipulate. And it worked. Every time. I started to realize something even darker. She wasn't just playing with us. She was learning. She was preparing. She was perfecting her craft. And I had no idea how far she could go. By the time she turned 15, I had stopped thinking of her as a child. I had stopped thinking of her as my daughter. I began thinking of her as a force, a dangerous, intelligent, calculating force, and I was powerless against it. Every night, I would sit alone staring at the ceiling, thinking about the life I had imagined, the life I thought I had built, and I realized that life was gone, taken, stolen by the very child I had raised with all my love, all my care, and all my devotion. She had created a house of secrets, a house where love was twisted into fear, where innocence hid darkness, where my role as a mother had been replaced by someone I no longer recognized. And I understood in that moment that nothing would ever be normal.
By the time she was 16, I had come to a terrifying realization. My daughter wasn't just controlling our home, she was controlling me. Every decision I made, every word I spoke, every glance I gave was filtered through her eyes first, judged, recorded, measured. I didn't notice at first. How could I? I thought I was raising a child, guiding her, protecting her. I thought I had some power in this house, but I was wrong. I had lost. She didn't yell, she didn't fight, she didn't even need to manipulate loudly. She had learned the art of quiet domination. She would plant little suggestions, test boundaries, whisper something to a friend or a relative, watch me react, and then she would step back, smile, and let the storm she had engineered unfold on its own. It was always calculated, always precise, always terrifying. That summer, I began to notice her stepping into new territory. She no longer needed to hide her intentions entirely. She was bold now, confident, certain of her power. It started with small things, pushing her father and me against each other in ways that were subtle but effective. She would say things to him when I wasn't in the room, tiny phrases that made him doubt me. "Mommy doesn't understand," she'd whisper. "Mommy thinks you don't care about me." Then she would come to me, trembling slightly, making it seem as if she had confided in me in trust, as if I were the only one who could protect her. I would look at my husband later and see confusion in his eyes, or even suspicion, and I knew immediately what she had done. She had learned how to turn our love for her against us. She had learned the most dangerous lesson of all. She could make people doubt reality itself. One night, I tried to confront her directly. I could no longer bear the tension, the isolation, the constant manipulation. I cornered her in the kitchen, the lights harsh and cold. "We need to talk," I said, my voice trembling. She looked up at me, calm,
innocent, wide-eyed, the perfect picture of a scared teenager. "What about, Mom?" she asked softly. I swallowed hard. "About all this, all the games, the lies, the manipulation. I see what you're doing. You're hurting us. You're controlling everything in this house, and I can't take it anymore." Her lips curved slightly, just enough to be disturbing. Not a smile, not a frown, just something else. "Oh, Mom," she said, her voice gentle. "I'm not hurting anyone. I'm just surviving." Her words pierced me. "Surviving?" I asked, anger rising. "What do you mean, surviving? You're hurting the people who love you." She shrugged, still calm, still collected. "You don't understand me. You never did. But don't worry, one day you'll see. You'll see that I'm not the problem. The world is." And that's when I realized something horrifying. She was already planning. Her manipulation wasn't random. It wasn't impulsive. She was strategic, building something invisible, unstoppable. She had learned how to play us, how to turn us against each other, how to isolate me completely. I started sleeping with my door locked at night, not because she threatened me physically, but because I had learned to fear her mind. She could twist situations, create chaos, make people doubt their own reality, and she did it silently, patiently, and perfectly. By the middle of that year, the house felt like a battlefield. Every conversation was a trap, every glance was a test, every movement was a strategy. Even my husband, my partner, began questioning my perceptions. He didn't see what I saw. He didn't understand the calculations behind every word, every smile, every act. He trusted her, loved her, defended her, and every time he did, I felt smaller, weaker, more powerless. I remember one evening vividly. I was trying to explain to him, finally, after months of gathering proof, notes, examples, the patterns of her manipulation. "She's dangerous," I said, voice low but trembling. "Not physically, but emotionally. She controls everything, and you're blind to it." He looked at me, tired, frustrated, confused. "You're overreacting. She's 16. She's a teenager. Stop imagining things." But I knew I wasn't imagining anything. Later that night, I heard her in the hallway, whispering softly, not to me, not to anyone I could see. She didn't know I was awake, listening. "You see, Mommy," she whispered, "it's easy. They don't believe you. They never will. And I just watch." I froze. Those words, that tone, that quiet, chilling calm. I had raised someone who understood power in ways adults often don't, someone who could quietly dominate without ever raising her voice, someone who could dismantle a family while smiling and laughing, someone who could destroy lives without leaving a trace, and she was only 16. I realized then that we were living in a house controlled by a mind far older, far sharper, and far more dangerous than I had ever imagined. I felt trapped, powerless, alone. By the time she turned 16, I knew one thing with certainty. My daughter had become something I could not fight in the conventional sense. She wasn't violent in the traditional way. She didn't need to be. Her weapon was her mind. Her shield was her innocence. Her power was total. And she was winning. I began to understand that there would be no simple solutions. No sudden revelation could change what had been built over the years. No therapy, no punishment, no conversation could undo what she had learned, what she had become. I had raised a nightmare, and it was fully awake now.
By the time she turned 17, the house no longer felt like a home. It felt like a stage for her. Every corner, every hallway, every room had become part of her performance. I had tried everything: therapy, intervention, conversations, documentation, warnings, but nothing worked. She had grown too clever, too patient, too dangerous. And I had come to the terrifying realization that this wasn't just about manipulation or control anymore. It was about survival. Not hers, mine. I began to notice subtle changes that frightened me even more than her quiet manipulations. The way she would watch me from across the room with that calm, measured stare.
The way she could make a family argument start with a single sentence, spoken softly, almost innocently. The way she seemed to anticipate my every move, every reaction, every thought. One evening, I walked into the living room to find her sitting in the middle of the floor, surrounded by notebooks. Hundreds of them. I had never seen so many. She looked up at me and smiled, sweet and angelic, but her eyes were different. Older, clever, calculating. "Mom," she said, her voice soft, "I've been keeping track of everything, every word, every look, every action, every mistake." I felt my chest tighten. I tried to step closer, but she didn't flinch. She didn't retreat. She didn't even blink. I realized in that moment she was prepared. Every scenario, every argument, every possible conflict, she had planned for it all. I couldn't confront her directly anymore because she had already anticipated my words. She had already learned my fears. She had already turned every potential objection against me, and I was trapped. She stood up slowly and walked toward me, hands in her pockets, smiling faintly. "You see, Mom," she said, calm and deliberate, "I've learned a lot about people, about trust, about weakness, and about you." I felt my knees weaken. "What do you mean?" I asked, voice shaking. She tilted her head. "I mean, I've learned a lot about people, about trust, about weakness, and about you." I felt my knees weaken. "What do you mean?" I asked, voice shaking. She tilted her head. "I mean, I've learned a lot about people, about trust, about weakness, and about you." I felt my knees weaken. "What do you mean?" I asked, voice shaking. She tilted her head. "I mean, I've learned a lot about people, about trust, about weakness, and about you." I swallowed hard, my heart hammering. You've become dangerous," I whispered, almost to myself. She smiled wider, but it wasn't joyful, it wasn't playful, it was complete. "I know," she said, "and that's why I'm careful. I don't hurt anyone unless I need to. But don't worry, Mom, I control my own destiny, and you've been teaching me without even knowing it." I felt tears welling in my eyes. This was my daughter, the little girl I had raised with love, devotion, and endless patience, and she had become a stranger who knew me better than anyone, a stranger who could manipulate me with a single word, a single glance, a single silence. I wanted to run, I wanted to escape, I wanted to fight, but I knew I couldn't, not anymore. She had too much power, too much knowledge, too much control, and she knew it. I realized then that this was never going to be about punishment or correction. It was going to be about survival, about understanding the monster I had raised, about protecting myself, my family, and anyone else from the quiet, invisible power she wielded. That night, I sat in my room staring at the ceiling, listening to the house breathe, listening to her breathing, listening to the soft, subtle movements in the dark. I thought about the years, the lies, the manipulations, the quiet wars waged in every corner of our home. I thought about the sleepless nights, the anxiety, the fear, the helplessness, and I thought about the truth. The truth was that I had raised a child who had learned to control everyone around her without violence, without force, without anyone realizing it. A child who could charm, manipulate, and destroy with words, gestures, and subtlety alone. A child who had outgrown innocence long before she should have. And the hardest part? I loved her. I had always loved her. Every sacrifice, every sleepless night, every ounce of patience had been for her. And yet, I feared her. Not because I didn't love her, but because love alone couldn't protect me from what she had become. I realized that raising a child is never just about teaching them right from wrong. Sometimes it's about recognizing the darkness they carry. Sometimes it's about seeing the warning signs before it's too late. Sometimes it's about surviving a nightmare you helped bring into the world. She hadn't become evil overnight. She had learned, she had observed, she had adapted. She had learned the lessons of human weakness faster than anyone should have, and I had unknowingly handed them to her. As I lay awake that night, I understood the final truth. My daughter had become unstoppable, and there was no changing her mind, no controlling her, no protecting her from herself or anyone else from her. I had raised my own nightmare, and all I could do now was survive.